Aloha! Welcome back to the Anxiety Coaches Podcast. I'm your host and coach, Gina Ryan, and I'm so happy to be with you again today as we consider the many ways to bring your mind and body back to its natural peace and calm. In today's episode, I'm talking about harnessing your circle of influence for relief from your anxiety, and this is part 1. In a couple of days, I will have part 2 for you, but I had a lot of information on this and I didn't want to rush through it, so I'm going to do it in 2 parts. Now, I am a big fan of coming back to what we can control. When we feel the stress and anxiety begin to arise, I just want to come back to what can I take care of? What can I control? And I know that all of you have seen the memes, and I mentioned this on an episode, maybe it was the last episode, I'm not sure, but the memes of 2 concentric circles with you as the center point of the first circle. And all of the things that you can control will be closest to you in that first circle. And then the outer circle includes things you cannot control. Or, as Stephen Covey called it, your circle of concern. And I really like that term, your circle of concern, because we are naturally very drawn to this outer circle because it may contain a lot of things that we really have care and concern about, but we may not have any influence over those things. And I think this is a beautiful way to split these things up. Now, I originally bumped into this idea back in the late 80s, 1989. That book was released. I know those were the dark ages, long before Google or internet or anything. And I was reading books that were not specific to anxiety because there were few, if any, and I had not run into them if they were there. So, remember, no internet, no Google, no way to search for things, just our local libraries. I did not live in a big city. And this book I did stumble on. This book by Stephen Covey. And this is really representative of the books that I was able to get my hands on and read. Like I mentioned here, a lot of philosophy books that I've been able to run into back then and spirituality. But this one from Stephen Covey, entitled The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is more of a business and self-help book, but it is exactly what the anxious mind needs to feel grounded and secure. I'll put a link to his book in the show notes, and I want you to know that I think it is on its 30-year anniversary or something being re-released. So over 40 million of them have been sold. You've probably heard of it 100 times, if not Stephen Covey. But for those of you who are not familiar with Stephen Covey or the 7 Habits, the 7 Habits are a step-by-step model that empowers you to make decisions and take action rather than reacting to events around you. So now do you see why I talk about it here? Because what do we talk about here for our anxiety? We talk about responding rather than reacting. And he talked about it as taking action rather than reacting to the events around you. And the 7 Habits has strong links to emotional intelligence, and it emphasizes the importance of self-awareness in order to have successful engagement with others and the world around you. And again, of course, this helps us with our anxiety to have emotional intelligence and to be self-aware. So I am so glad that I got it in my head to talk about Stephen Covey's book when it came to talking about these circle of influence and the memes that go around out there. I know you've seen hundreds of them. You can control this, you can't control that. But I wanted to get a little more granular on it so that maybe you can see exactly where in your life these are coming up, where your circles are, and the items in your life, where you will place them. The concept of the circle of influence, again, popularized by Stephen Covey, is a really powerful way for managing anxiety. It involves focusing on what we can control. Now, that's our circle of influence, right? That inner circle. And letting go of what we cannot control. That is the circle of concern. And so here are some ways that it breaks down. I wanted to talk first about the things that you can control, your circle of influence. So again, on that piece of paper, there's a little dot on the paper. That's you. And you have a nice circle around it. That is your circle of influence. And then there's another bigger circle, and we'll get to that one. That is your circle of concern. But let's move in closer to the dot and your circle of influence. First up is going to be your thoughts. You can control your thoughts. And what I mean by that is how you interpret situations. We all know that two people can hear the same thing and they interpret it differently. We get to control how we interpret things. We get to think about it. Now, this is not easy, especially because when we are anxious, oftentimes we are living by rote. We are stuck in a habitual way of doing many things, and our thinking is one of those things that becomes a habit, and we just slide into the same old. But we can, even after the fact, think about how we interpreted a situation, and we can expose it, so to speak, so that we have another way of looking at it, and we can use that and reference that in the future. And another way with our thoughts is the way that we talk to ourselves, our self-talk. We are in control of that, meaning we can make changes. Will it be easy? No. Does it happen right away? No, but you can do it. This is where we have some power, some control. But oftentimes we are so busy spending time in our circle of concern with things that we have no influence or ability to change, that we have no energy for these things such as working on our thoughts and our self-talk. And finally, with our thoughts, your mindset and your perspective, those are in your circle of influence. You can control those. Now, I'm not going to get into specifics on how you can do that. That will be in the next episode. Today, I wanted to introduce you to fully the circle of influence and the circle of control. And so next up in our circle of influence would be your actions. How are you responding to situations? And I use the word respond here, but when we're stuck in anxiety, we are often not responding, but we are reacting. So our actions, how are we responding to situations? Another thing in your actions would be your daily habits and your routines. How are we setting up our life and our habits and our routines to work for us? This is where we have control. We can change the way our day is laid out. Maybe small changes depending on how your life is and how many people depend on you, but you can make small changes. Also, the effort that you put into tasks and goals is within your control. How much effort are you putting into the place you want to be? How much effort are you putting into the tasks that will get you there? Are you spending a few minutes a day in quiet contemplation or meditation? And well, if you're expecting to be anxiety-free and living more joy and calm in your life, you need to put in the effort, the action to get to that goal. Now, number 3 in our circle of influence would be your emotions. What do you use to manage and process your emotions? If you are having trouble with those emotions, you want to find techniques that can help you to manage and process emotions. And that is all within your control. But oftentimes we say, oh, no, it's about the other person, right? Or it is about the situation, the circumstance. But nope, our emotions can be managed and processed by how we are handling them. And if we don't know how to handle them well, we need to educate ourselves and have techniques that can help us there. And also with your emotions, your attitude and how you choose to feel in the moment each and every day. That is within our control. It's kind of funny because our circle of influence is often what we want to put out to other people. We want to say, no, they made me do this, or the circumstance made me do this. We forget that our emotions are within our circle of influence. And if we don't have the tools and techniques and skills to do that, we need to just gain those. This is within our control. Number 4 is your choices. And this comes back to these others. Decisions about how you want to spend your time. That is a choice that you make. And that is in your circle of control. Who you spend your time with and what activities you engage in, that is all within your control. What do you prioritize and focus on in your life? We spend a lot of time on the outer circle, that circle of concern, and we ignore these places that we have control and influence. And what do you prioritize and focus on in your life? These are your choices, and you can have influence on them. And number 5, your communication. How you are expressing yourself to others. The boundaries that you set in your relationships. Again, we ignore this sometimes. We stick our head in the sand. And we say, no, they did this or they did that. They won't let me. Boundaries. We set these in a relationship. This is all done through our communication, and that is a place that you have control. And how you listen and engage in conversations with other people. How you are listening and how you are engaging or responding to the other people with your communication. And again, if you are not well versed in communication or you'd like to be better in how you are communicating or living in relationship with others, you can get to work on that. That takes us back to putting the effort into your tasks and goals. If you want something different, take the actions that are going to get you there. Put the effort in to do that. And finally, number 6, your environment. And that is like ideas like how you organize and maintain your personal space. That is yours to control. What media do you consume? Social media, the news, television, movies, whatever. And the influences that you allow into your life. What you allow in your environment is within your control. Now let's take a look at what you cannot control, your circle of concern. This is that outer circle now. The first one here is other people's thoughts. How others interpret your actions or words. You have no control over that. And I bet if you're anything like me, I spend time there. It's like I have to call myself back and go, wait a minute. This is out of my control. What within my circle of control can I take care of here instead of thinking about how someone else is thinking? That's not mine. Neither is what others think about me. And that's very interesting, right? What do others think about me or my show or the comments they leave? This is about them and how they feel and their opinions. And those are their thoughts. And those are out in the circle of concern. I cannot change those things. Number 2 here with what you cannot control is other people's actions. So that goes first their thoughts, then their actions. How they behave, how they react or respond to you is not for you to change. And the decisions that other people make is also outside of your circle of concern. That can be hard for many of us who are people pleasers and who maybe have raised children or have young family members, because we want to influence those things. But that is out in our circle of concern. Adult people are going to make decisions that we do not have any control over. Now, also, number 3 here, this is interesting, the past. I know you know this, but we still go there, don't we? You have no control over the past. Events that have already happened are done. It is water under the bridge. It is milk that is already spilled. Mistakes or failures from the past cannot be changed or controlled. And those go out into your circle of concern. Yes, you care, you remember, you learned from it, but you do not have a way of controlling it. And that takes me to number 4, the future. This is very anxiety producing, isn't it? The future. Unpredictable events that might happen. We have no control over that. That is in our circle of concern. So when we are out there in that ring of circle of concern, worried about the future, bring yourself back in to your circle of influence. What can you control? Certainly is not the future or the outcomes of situations that are beyond your control. Number 5, external circumstances. Things like global events, politics, economic conditions. These are external circumstances that we have no control over. We want to remember that. It's the circle of concern. Yes, we care, but we have no way of controlling it. Same goes for natural disasters or accidents. We care, but it is not within our control. And finally, 6, the opinions of others. I alluded to this earlier with other people's thoughts, but what others think about topics or situations is outside of our control. And the public opinion and social media narratives are outside of our control. But as you can see, we spend a lot of time there, don't we? We tend to spend a lot more time, if you can be honest, if you spend a lot of time in the circle of concern while ignoring the circle of influence. Now, just briefly, I want to say that this really does help with anxiety, because when we focus on what we can control, we empower ourselves to reduce feelings of helplessness. And I gotta say, anxious people often feel helpless in some areas. It can reduce our overwhelm by letting go of things that are outside of our control, and it can help us minimize anxiety triggers and all that mental clutter we carry around. Concentrating on your influence allows you to develop proactive habits and resilience and responding versus reacting, and that is crucial for anxiety management. We move from the reactive mindset, the circle of concern, to the responsive mindset that focuses on the circle of influence. We do this over time with practice, patience, and compassion as we learn a new way of looking at our lives. So I have a great episode to follow. and be part 2 with how to apply the circle of influence concept into your daily life and some practical tools to stay within your circle of influence and reducing anxiety. Hope to see you there in a few days. And now for today's quote. Reactive people are often affected by their physical environment. They find external sources to blame for their behavior. Proactive people recognize they have responsibility for their behavior. And that's from Stephen Covey. I'll be back in a few more days with another podcast. Until then, be well and aloha.